I'm back. Court Ratnowski, publisher of Yankee Tea News, on this Monday, September 8th, the year of our Lord, 2025. Another shout out to Steve Bannon. Keep it up, Steve. Keep it up. Okay, part one. I want you to remember this number. It's an important number. Do you see it there? Okay, 1,971 names. What could I possibly be referring to? Well, it might have something to do with our theme tonight. 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein, okay? So, for all you people who don't know, there is this concept called 6 degrees of separation. The concept is simple. If I was to give somebody the challenge to find some individual, pull him out of a phone book, he's somewhere in Poland, and I'd say, you can't call him directly, but you have to find the person who might know a person who might know a person who would know the person in Poland. And the research shows that it's 5 to 6 steps that it takes from me to that person in terms of connection. So this just shows how much people are connected. And the concept of 6 degrees of separation in the context of Jeffrey Epstein takes on a whole other meaning when you consider that his list, remember the list that Pam said did not exist? That list, 1,971 names. And they weren't just any old names, right? They were the names of the rich, the powerful, the elites of the world. Okay, so all of this said, that's a pretext or preface. Here's the problem I have, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at all this coverage, sex trafficker, con man, blackmailer, God knows what else, okay? Nowhere does anybody ask, why? Why is he doing this? Is he just doing it for the money? He did get a lot of money. Could that be the sole reason? What are his real goals and objectives? And I find when you try to put Jeffrey Epstein's history in that context, a somewhat different picture emerges. And I tell you, I'm going to end up in a place even I didn't expect when I started to go through this. So, where do I want to start with this? All right, well, the next thing I want to jump to here, all right, it turns out that Jeffrey Epstein was an atheist and, even bigger, a transhumanist. Did anybody know that Jeffrey Epstein was a transhumanist? Well, if you didn't, but you did know that one of Jeffrey Epstein's favorite activities was to go find leading intellectuals and academics in given subject areas. He was interested in Stephen Hawking, of all people. And then there's a guy we see on a lot of podcasts named Eric Weinstein. And he's very weird. He talks about his interactions with Jeffrey Epstein, but he gets very weird. You can see it in his whole tone and his whole manner. Something's going on there. Okay, as a transhumanist, so, I mean, come on, can we, I want to use one of Alan's favorite phrases. Think about it. What is a transhumanist doing messing around with, let's say it, billions of dollars? Billions, all right? Is it just because he likes money, or is there another objective? Now, before I get to my really extreme conclusion, at his purported funeral, it was a turnout of all the significant people in the Israeli intelligence community. So the Israeli intelligence community, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is more than just Mossad. Just want to be clear on that. So it was obvious by the virtue of who was at his funeral that he had a big role to play with Israeli intelligence. Okay, we can accept that. Transhumanist, atheist, major player in Israeli intelligence, and but you would think you're trying to go someplace with all of this. And so I am now going to introduce a piece of speculation that no one has talked about. So you're hearing it for the first time here tonight. So let's see if I turn out to be right or wrong. I accept that I could be wrong. For all you conspiracy theorists out there, one of your favorite topics might be what's called breakaway civilizations, right? You got a school of thought out there suggesting that there's a whole bunch of rich and powerful people who are trying to create their own version of a breakaway civilization. Now, I think there are different versions of this, but what I am submitting for your consideration is that Mr. Epstein would have had some role with a group of people who were concerned with breakaway civilizations, and he would have been running errands for them, doing special projects, because, quote, we're not there yet with respect to a real functioning breakaway civilization. But the groundwork was being laid, and I think we'll find out that he was a part of it. Now, of course, the problem, it's like the concept of dual-use technology. You look at a piece of technology, say this could be used for military or non-military purposes. Okay, so the things he worked on could be used for breakaway civilization purposes and not for breakaway civilization purposes. But I think in the fullness of disclosure, I think we might see something there. All right, so that's my big thing, but I do not want to leave out, and nor do I want to downplay with the victims of this, by the way. Please, don't get that impression. But the other hot issue here is, and I believe there's something to this, is because, I'm going to say it again, 1,971 names, you might have been messing around with a few people who had important things to do. And those important things had to be kept top secret. To reveal all that is Jeffrey Epstein would reveal these secrets, and these are not your ordinary run-of-the-mill secrets. These are secrets that could hurt people. And not only hurt people, but hurt governments, hurt nations. That has been discussed. People have looked at this and they said, you know what, this may be a big part of why we're not getting the whole truth about Jeffrey Epstein. So that's about, oh, and one last point was that, two other quick points. One is apparently worth noting is that towards the end of his life, he was very interested in surveillance technology. So in a sense, he was kind of late to the game, but he had a strong interest in that too, okay? And the other thing is, which I've been working on, I want to do a special presentation on this. I think it becomes very interesting, and I think you get some insight into the story of Jeffrey Epstein when you look at his network in terms of countries, okay? So you find out, for example, that he had a surprising set of relationships with Saudi Arabia. So somehow Saudi Arabia had something to do with his having an Austrian passport? What? How did that happen? Okay, so you got that. Odd relations with people in Norway. He was, you pick up India a little bit, some things with Russia, but kind of looked incidental. But the problem is when you're looking at these networks, what may look to you like an incidental connection may be part of some other network that's essentially invisible to you. So therein lies the problem. All right, that's enough of my stuff on Jeffrey Epstein. Now we're going to move on to the next stuff. Ay, Yamazzi. Okay. At first I thought, the Ukraine-Russia war goes through these cycles where there's a lot of activity, then it kind of calms down. And here we are in what's becoming mid-September. And you know what? So let's start with the latest. There was an announcement of another attack by Russia where they seemed to penetrate somewhat further into Ukraine. We don't know what kind of pushback Ukraine will have. There have been other cases where there are these reported penetrations, but Ukraine was able to repulse them. So, all of that said, one of the links, you definitely got to go. You got the links posted, Eric? Are the links posted?
They should be.
All right, so make sure you post them because there's cool stuff on there, let me tell you.
I don't think YouTube allows us to put links into the description.
So, but there's got to be a place to put them. I mean, because, you say description.
You have to send the link. If you've sent the links out to your email list, then people will have them.
Yes, but for the YouTube, normally there's the thing, there's a description.
They don't like it.
But I see them all the time.
Those are like for promotions and stuff like that. They allow
you download this notebook.
No.
They're there. I see them. How can they not be there? I see them.
I'll try again. but.
All right, there may be a way to do it, okay? Okay, try and get back to the main hot item here. All right, I'm gonna just go down the list. So you have this issue with casualties. One of the surprises, ladies and gentlemen, is there are people who are devoted full-time to just answering this question: how many people have been killed, how many have been wounded, Russian side, Ukrainian side. They look for obituaries, they look for graveyards, they interview people, they look for information anywhere they can in order to scrape together some kind of an estimate. So they're not just shooting in the dark, just so you know. So when you have these claims like Russia approaching 1 million dead and wounded, and then the claim for Ukraine approaching 1.7 million dead and wounded, these are not random numbers, okay? Whether they're right or not is a whole other question, but I think that's something to keep in mind. Now, for those who have been following this, the other hot item is that Ukraine has really stepped up its efforts to attack the Russian energy infrastructure, primarily the refineries. Pipelines are also of a lot of interest too. I think I mentioned it last week. You have, for example, these pumping stations that move oil through these pipelines. And the plan is to basically put out of action as many of these pumping stations as they can. The problem is that as the weather gets colder, they have to be able to keep the oil flowing. If they don't keep the oil flowing, things freeze up, and then they're in serious trouble. So it's a high priority item to them. Anyway, I don't know whether to believe this factoid, but I'm throwing it out for you. It is estimated that it's something like 17% of the oil refinery capacity has been impaired or taken offline at any given time in the last couple of months. Now, of course, that number changes quickly because the Russians quickly repair what they can to get it back online. But the argument is, if the pressure that the Ukrainians put on their energy infrastructure is sufficient to lower production, especially for domestic purposes, that's gonna be a problem for not only the Russian people, but the Russian government as well. Now, on this point, one of the things I want to hit on here, I've made this point before. All you economics fans out there might remember the term stagflation. Stagflation, which is stagnant growth with inflation, was coined back in the 70s for a time when America saw extremely high interest rates and the economy was not doing well. And we had job losses. There was a high unemployment. Okay, so this was sort of thought of as an American thing. Well, no. Guess who else is subject to stagflation? That's right, Russia. Who knew? Okay, sorry?
Not Ukraine.
We haven't heard it with Ukraine yet. I don't know why. But so here's the tell. The tell is, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, reports of mortgages, Russian mortgages. Who even knew there were Russian mortgages? I didn't know. Did you know there were Russian mortgages? No, neither did I. Did you know there were Russian mortgages?
Why would you need a mortgage in a country where nobody owns anything?
Guess what? Times are a-changing. Okay, so Russian mortgages. Well, here's the problem. The report was that Russian mortgages are having interest rates as high as 25%. That's unthinkable. That's like a credit card, okay? Only it's a mortgage. It's insane. All right, but the reason for this is that the rest of the economy was in trouble. So in other words, in a stagflation economic environment, interest rates have to go up. And by the way, if you want to buy a Russian bond, I think it's a 20% interest rate on a Russian bond. Sounds tempting, but I'll take a pass on that one. So the point is that this piece of information suggests that Russia's economy is in trouble. Pair that with the stuff concerning their energy infrastructure, you know, you got to kind of wonder. Though I will add, can't leave them out. So India apparently wants to be really tight with Russia. Maybe there are other relationships they have that we don't know about, okay? So Russia had been selling oil to India at a 30% discount, right? And so somebody thought it was a clever ruse. Have Saudi Arabia offer their oil to India at a 50% discount. Any guesses what India said? No, thank you. We'll keep taking the Russian oil. Sayonara. Okay, so what's that all about? So whatever that relationship is, it has a lot to do with more than just money. I'm just saying. Okay, now all right. For the longest time, we've seen all this going on here with Russia, trying to pile on various sanctions. And guess what? They're not working. Russia's very clever. They managed to work out these workaround solutions on various financial sanctions. And Trump says he hasn't even begun to sanction Russia. And then the EU is supposed to chip with some sanctions of their own. Okay. And the attitude in Moscow is, bring it. Go ahead. Sanction us some more. We'll show you what we can do. So you got that. In the meantime, so there was this one other, here it is. This article, this is incredible. Okay, the title is, it's a war of drones now, the ever-evolving tech dominating the front line in Ukraine. All right, if we can get these links up, and it's important, we're going to have to do this. This article explains right straight up front why the Ukrainian military is doing such a great job with drones, okay? It's, and there are a lot of things. I'm going to pick out a few things here. So drone technology is evolving in an incredible way where you're dealing with a military attack, right? Reconnaissance, rescue, interception as well. And did I say, yes, rescue. So now you have these land drones that are plucking Ukrainian soldiers off of the battlefield and taking them back for medical treatment. It's just incredible. And then they have a range of drones that can do different things. And there's a drone now they're very proud of that can go, 160 miles an hour, was it? But it can only fly for 45 minutes because of the battery. But these are examples of where the drone technology is evolving. And it's true for the Russians as well. Although I'll say the impression that I get is that the Russian drone technology isn't changing quite as quickly. So I just had to throw that in. Okay, so now we're going to move on. We've got to move on to the next thing here. Yes? Yeah, the fiber optic, yeah, not everybody's doing that. I mean, they're doing it, and I'm not sure how to address that. Anyway, there won't be any peace talks anytime soon. I just wanted to remind you. So, since the party in Shanghai, right? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, where you had China, Russia, India, and 26 other countries, including Turkey, all showing up to say, we hate America. So you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I think the battle lines are beginning to be drawn here with something like the SCO. Who knows where they're going to go with what they want to do. But I don't have the time here for the analysis, but I'll just say that there was a kind of a big deal about how there was this hot mic moment between Putin and Xi. Oh yeah, like and subscribe. And I'm going to tell you again, like and subscribe. We need those subscriptions. All right? So the hot mic moment was where you could hear Putin and Xi talking in English. Was it in English? I don't know. They were talking about immortality and organ transplants. Well, if there's a country that's really getting good at organ harvesting, that would be China. So the argument now is about, or discussion, was about how they as individuals could look forward to lives where they could live to be 150, maybe even 200 years old by relying on organ transplants. Well, Steve Bannon made the point. This hot mic moment was not a mistake. It was intentional. They wanted to send a message. And I'm thinking, well, what message could you possibly be sending? Okay? All you're saying is you're an atheist. You don't believe in God. You don't believe in a soul. The body is all there is. And when you die, that's it. So we're going to try and figure out how to live as long as we can. And we're doing a better job of it than you, and we're looking forward to taking advantage of it before you do. Ha, 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 ha. Is that what it is? I don't get it. It's very strange, very strange. Okay, So I just had to get that off my chest. Now, if you're not paying attention, it's okay. But this is one of these things that's going to really rear its ugly head in the next few months, okay? And historians will date it to the op-ed piece that was written by our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, where he suggested that the Fed was suffering from a gain-of-function disease of its own, okay? And what he was saying was that it's mission creep. It's really mission creep. The Fed has mixed it up in areas where they have no business being, okay? This whole stuff with quantitative easing, quantitative tightening, no. That was never your job. So what the hell are you doing? All right, well, it's that and more. So they're trying these arcane things that don't, and what, modern monetary theory, trying to pull that crap? Seriously. Okay. So, I mean, it's the Secretary of Treasury. It's not some schmo on the street, okay? The Secretary of the Treasury is saying the Fed has got to clean up its act or it's got to go. And I'll tell you, the voices of those people who think it's got to go are getting louder and louder, and I'm kind of in that camp. This becomes an interesting problem, ladies and gentlemen, because you're left with two models here, all right? Centralized banking, and the Fed is a part of that, okay? Or you, quote, trust the market without any government intervention to speak of. There are arguments on both sides, but I will say that given the fact that the value of the dollar has been degraded, okay, under a centralized banking system should tell us just about all we need to know. All right, let me move on to the next thing. The Department of Education has issued a report. Oh, Tong time. Oh, wait, my Tong time? I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot that. And by the way, since he mentioned Tong time, Tina Peters, okay? Dear Governor Polis, we keep reminding you every week, it's time to let Tina go. Here you have an older woman, a Gold Star mother who lost a son, and you want to keep her in prison for what? What will turn out to be a violation of her First Amendment rights, okay? So why don't you get ahead of the curve here for once, Governor Polis, and just let her go? Just a suggestion. And I think President Trump was kind of alluding to it because he did mention Tina Peters in one of these ad hoc, press conferences in the Oval Office, basically acknowledging that because she's under state charges, the federal government's kind of in a difficult position. But the federal government has all kinds of options to really put pressure on the state of Colorado, okay? More than just having moved the Space Academy to Alabama because they're upset over Colorado going to mail-in voting, mail-in ballots. All right, so I want to move on to the next thing. While I'm thinking about that, all right, this is important. When you look at what is happening in the United Kingdom, okay? Britain is going through a period of misery and suffering, which they will have to endure for at least a couple more years if they are not to have a civil war. The challenge in my mind is this: can the people of England organize themselves among themselves, aside from the government, and form their own chain of command, their own lines of authority, where they can push back against these problems that are being brought to their doorstep, okay? That's the question. Right now, it doesn't look so likely, okay, but maybe. So Bannon's speech is very important. He puts what's happening in Britain in a broader context. Another brief mention is the Chinese hacker who imitated a U.S. congressman. It was in an email. Let me see where I put that story. And yeah, here it is. So, as American trade talks with China were set to begin last July, a puzzling email reached several U.S. government agencies. And the authorship was attributed to one representative, John Moulinar, but it was really a Chinese hacker who was imitating him. So this stuff is out of control. And I would just, okay, President Trump has pointed in the right direction, but personally, I feel that we must adopt a much more harsh attitude towards China. He's tried to make nice about trade relations, but they're still screwing us, okay? The 600,000 students, bad idea. I understand why. I talked about that last week, I think, but still. All right. One other thing, two other things. I got to get this out of the way. Okay, this is hot off the press, okay? So it turns out just mere hours ago that the French Parliament has issued a vote of no confidence to the current Prime Minister, whose name is François Bayrou. How do you like that French accent? François Bayrou. François Bayrou. He is the fifth? He's the fifth Prime Minister under Macron to get a vote of no confidence in the last, 2 years or something? At what point do you realize something is deeply, deeply wrong? At what point? Okay? I don't want to think that Macron is a slow learner, but it sure looks like it. You're having too much wine and you're eating too much brie, buddy. Just saying. Too much wine, yes. Yes, the best phrase I've heard to describe the French is dour, D-O-U-R, dour sensualists, sad sensualists, depressed sensualists. Okay, the other thing, yes, so here we have the other thing. Look, Connecticut has a serious problem with respect to election integrity. It is not even close to being addressed. I think our side is still having trouble getting its legs under and being able to move forward with this. I just want to remind you, this lovely woman, Wanda, a couple weeks ago, she was arrested again because she can't help herself, okay? But she's just part of a larger problem between the registrar in Fairfield, who is trying to eliminate signatures for absentee ballots, and we have this unanswered. There are two other quick things. I want to get this out of the way. So the other thing was the, the state of Connecticut 60-40 agreed to have what are called no excuse absentee ballots. Ladies and gentlemen, there is effectively no difference between a so-called no excuse absentee ballot and a mail-in ballot. They're the same. They don't want to say it, but mail-in ballots are bad. They just open up all kinds of cheating.
There's one difference.
What's that?
A mail-in ballot has to be sent in by mail, and a no-excuse absentee ballot can be dumped by the hundreds by Wanda.
Yeah, well, fine. You can dump it by hundreds, or you can mail it by hundreds. All right. And Eric is getting anxious because he keeps doing this.
I thought he was dancing.
Yes, anyway, I'm almost done. Almost done. Okay. Now, just another piece here. 40 essays were yanked by Business Insider, which apparently had used a little bit too much AI to generate them. So, ladies and gentlemen, we know that this stuff with AI is becoming a serious problem. You got the article there. All right, and the last thing is the food additive of the week is sodium nitrite. And lots to say about it, but this is all I'm going to say. When you consume sodium nitrate, especially if the meat that contains it was cooked a little too much, you get something called nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are not very good for you to begin with, but when you couple it with alcohol, now you have a wonderful carcinogenic brew in your stomach. So isn't that just wonderful to think about? So we'll be putting more stuff up. There's a lot to go over. The world is going crazy, and we're going to help you keep track of it. So thank you very much.